Have you ever stopped to think about how much ancient Rome shapes our world, especially our government? It's not just history class stuff, it's like woven right in. Okay, let's unpack this. We've got this great stack of sources you sent over, and we're going to dive deep into how Rome's influence, well, it's still shaping things government, law, military tactics, even how we think about economics. You'll probably find some surprising connections.
Yeah, what's fascinating here isn't just listing historical facts. It's about seeing those Roman ideas, their successes and their failures showing up in our lives today, often in ways we don't even realize. We'll look at the Republic, the Empire, how they rose, how they fell, and what we can still sort of learn from it all.
So let's start right at the beginning. Early Roman government. Legend says Rome was founded, what, 753 BCE? By Romulus, who was supposedly a demigod. So right away, ruling has this kind of divine thing going on.
Exactly. The early kings definitely leaned on that myth for authority. They governed through these 30 districts, the curiae, and there was an assembly, the comitia curiate, but it mostly just informed the king, didn't make laws.
And the laws came from where?
Advice on laws came from an early senate, about 100 guys, all upper class, advising the king. It sounds, well, pretty absolute.
Totally absolute. But that didn't stick.
No, it definitely didn't. By 509 BCE, the upper class had had enough of King Tarquin the Proud, him and his son's antics. They didn't just kick him out. They actually got rid of the kingship altogether. That's when they set up the Roman Republic.
That's a huge step. Replacing a king with someone accountable to the people.
A massive leap that started with a praetor, someone responsible to the people. That idea of accountability, really radical for the time.
A huge shift, yeah. But those kinds of changes, they never happen smoothly, do they? There must have been pushback.
Oh, absolutely. That's where you get the conflict of the orders.
Yeah.
It went on for ages, like from around 500 BCE to maybe 287 BCE. It was this ongoing tension between the patricians, the rich aristocrats, and the plebeians, the regular folks.
So a class struggle, basically.
Pretty much. A real clash over power and rights. And it's actually this struggle that leads to something incredibly important, the 12 tables, around 449 BCE.
Ah, the famous 12 tables. And they were more than just new laws, weren't they?
Way more. They were revolutionary because they were Rome's first written down laws, and they put them up on bronze tablets right there in the forum for everyone to see.
So transparency.
Exactly. Huge. It meant any male citizen over 15 could actually know their rights, their obligations. It wasn't just a legal doc. It was like arming the common man with knowledge. Made it way harder for the powerful to just make stuff up or twist the rules. Now, women were still protected through male relatives mostly, but just getting the laws out there was a massive step towards, legal equality.
Okay, so from that kind of foundational moment, how did the Republic's government structure keep changing?
Well, that single praetor role, it eventually evolved into having two consuls. These guys were elected by the People's Assembly, but only served for 1 year.
Only 1 year.
Yep. And get this, each consul could veto the other one's decisions.
Veto, like our veto power.
Exactly like it. The word itself comes straight from Latin. I forbid it. It's a direct echo, but it was also a really practical way to stop one person from getting too much power.
And by then, they had those 3 branches of government, which, yeah, sounds incredibly familiar. Can you break those down?
Sure. It's like their early version of checks and balances, separating powers. You had the legislative branch, different assemblies, plus the Senate. The Senate had 300 upper-class members serving for life, advising the consuls, issuing decrees. Huge influence.
Okay.
Then the executive branch.
Yeah.
Those 2 consuls we mentioned. Upper-class, 1-year term. And finally, the judicial branch.
Yeah.
8 judges, also upper class, also just a 1-year term. It was this integrated system designed to keep power from concentrating too much in one place.
But even with all this upper class control, the plebeians, the common people, they still managed to get some power, didn't they? How'd they pull that off?
They were persistent, that's for sure. They won the right to have their own assemblies. They got the right to choose consuls from the Senate list. And crucially, they got their tribunes.
The tribunes, what did they do?
These tribunes could block laws they thought were unfair. They often met right in the forum, and they could send representatives into the Senate meetings to voice concerns and, literally yell veto if needed. It's a great example of popular pressure actually changing how things worked.
And this is where you really see the connection to the U.S. government, right?
Absolutely. Our Senate and House, they echo the Roman assemblies and Senate. The president, kind of like the consuls, Supreme Court, similar role to the Roman judges. The whole structure, the basic architecture of our democratic institutions has these deep Roman roots.
Okay, here's something really interesting you mentioned in the sources. The Roman system wasn't just about spreading power out, it was also about limiting it, both for powerful individuals and kind of deliberately for the poor. How did that work?
Yeah, they had some clever tricks. Having two consuls, the one-year terms, the veto power that all stopped one guy getting too strong. They had checks between different officials. Even religious leaders could step in sometimes. But limiting the power of the poor, that was less democratic.
How so?
Well, voting assemblies, like the Centurion Assembly, were weighted by wealth. The richest citizens' votes literally counted for more. The poorest folks, the proletariat, were often just lumped together into one single voting block. Their voice was tiny.
So your wealth determined your influence.
Pretty much. Plus, high offices were originally just for patricians. Even later, social barriers were strong, and the legal system wasn't always equal harsher punishments for the poor, things like that. There was this Roman thinker, Cicero, who actually said something like, the greatest number shouldn't have the greatest power.
Wow.
Yeah. And you can sort of see a faint echo of that idea, maybe, in things like the U.S. Electoral College. It's a reminder that even foundational democratic ideas often came with built-in limits.
Let's go back to those 12 tables. They didn't just set up government stuff, they really changed the whole idea of justice. Imagine being there in 450 BCE, the forum's buzzing, they unveil these bronze tablets. You can picture Julia, maybe a merchant's daughter, whispering, see, now they have to listen. We have rights.
It's hope, right?
Definitely hope for people like her.
But then you've got, I don't know, Senator Cornelius watching, maybe thinking, written laws. This could make things tricky for us. It must have sparked a real clash. It absolutely did. And look, as Rome got bigger, let's be honest, justice still often favored the rich and powerful. But having those laws written down, having that principle established, it gave ordinary Romans, like your Julia, something to point to, a basis to challenge unfairness.
And this period also saw that idea of just natural starting to form.
Right, just natural. The idea that justice isn't just whatever rules people make up, but it's like a universal thing, something you can figure out through reason that should guide all laws. A really profound concept.
And this whole quest for justice, even with its ups and downs, it leads somewhere huge centuries later, doesn't it?
It does. Fast forward to the 6th century CE, Emperor Justinian. He takes on this massive project, compiling the Corpus Juris Civilis, basically gathering together centuries of Roman law.
What was the point of that?
It preserved the core of Roman justice, ideas like fair trials, property rights, having independent judges. What's wild is, after Rome fell, a lot of this was lost in the West. Then, boom, rediscovered in the Middle Ages, around 1070 CE.
No way.
Yeah. And once rediscovered, it became the foundation for legal systems all across Europe. It spread those Roman legal ideas everywhere.
So if we connect that to today.
You see it everywhere.
Yeah.
In our courtrooms, international treaties, even just the idea of a judge weighing precedent against fairness. That sentiment Julia might have felt, the law must serve everyone, not just the powerful, that still drives legal thinking today. It really traces back to those early Roman efforts.
It's amazing how specific some examples are. Things we take for granted. Civil rights, making a will, setting up a business corporation, even being able to return something faulty to a shop.
Yep. That idea of returning faulty goods for a refund or replacement, ensuring fairness in trade, building consumer trust, that has roots in Roman commercial law. It's pretty nuts.
Okay, let's shift gears. The Roman military, an absolute powerhouse, right? Known for strength, discipline, constant innovation. It started as a citizen army, but became these professional legions that were the backbone of the empire.
And life as a legionary. Seriously demanding. Training was intense from day one. Constant drills, physical conditioning. They had to march, 20 miles a day carrying all their gear? Imagine that.
Heavy stuff.
Yeah. And discipline was everything. Absolute cornerstone. The whole system relied on obedience. Punishments for messing up. Severe. Their gear was top-notch too, designed for how they fought. The short sword, the gladius for close combat. The heavy javelin, the pilum, to break shields. That segmented armor, lorica segmentata, and the big curved shield, the scutum, all part of the system.
And the way they organized it was brilliant, too. The legion, maybe 4,000 to 6,000 soldiers.
All right, then broken down into 10 cohorts.
And cohorts into centuries, about 80 men each.
Exactly. And the command structure was clear. You had the legatus at the top, then 6 tribunes under him, handling admin and leadership. But the real key, the centurions.
The sergeants of their day.
Kind of, yeah. Experienced guys leading those centuries. You could spot them by their armor, often that sideways crest on the helmet. The top centurion, the primus pilus, was super important, even advised the commander. And then there's the camp prefect, the praefectus castrorum, managing the camp, supplies, logistics. Very organized.
And this structure allowed for some clever tactics.
Totally. The testudo, the tortoise formation, shields locked together for siege protection, iconic. But they also had the triplex APCs, the three-line system, letting fresh troops rotate in during battle, kept them fighting longer. And the wedge formation to punch through enemy lines,
They were adaptable too, right?
hugely adaptable, could change tactics based on the terrain, who they were fighting. That was crucial for expanding the empire.
So thinking beyond just fighting, what does this military machine tell us about Rome itself?
It tells us they weren't just soldiers. They were incredible builders and engineers. Think about it. Thousands of miles of paved roads, solid forts everywhere, aqueducts bringing water to cities, massive bridges.
All built by the army.
A lot of it, yeah. It served a dual purpose.
Yeah.
Made it easier to move troops, obviously. But it also helped spread Roman culture, Roman administration, their whole way of life across the map. The infrastructure was the empire, in a way.
And being a soldier wasn't just about fighting, it offered other benefits.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
For many guys, it was a path to, well, a better life. Social mobility, economic security. They got regular pay, a cut of any loot, and when they retired, a pension or often a nice plot of land.
That builds loyalty.
You bet. Loyalty to their commanders. And it kept a steady stream of new recruits coming in, knowing it could be a good career.
And you can still see the influence today, can't you? Modern armies.
Absolutely. The discipline, the organization into units, the clear chain of command that's a Roman template, even the idea of permanent military bases, strategic roads, it all echoes Rome.
Okay, let's talk economy. Rome left a huge mark there, too. They expanded massively, set up over 500 cities, right?
Yeah.
And it created these huge trade networks.
Yeah, all across the Mediterranean and even further. Spices from Asia, silk from China, tons of grain from Egypt. It was a really interconnected world, economically speaking.
And they standardized their money.
Crucial step. The denarius, their silver coin. Having standardized money made trade way easier over long distances. And collecting taxes. Much more efficient. That system really laid the groundwork for, modern money and market economies. Having a trusted currency makes everything flow.
And they used taxes for big projects.
It did. That sophisticated tax system funded those roads, aqueducts, public buildings we talked about, a real demonstration of what centralized state planning could achieve.
Yeah.
And during the Pax Romana, that long period of peace, trade really boomed, money lending took off. But there was a major downside, a fundamental challenge to their economy.
Which was?
Their massive reliance on slave labor.
Right.
I mean, it enabled huge farms, massive building projects, sure. But it also locked in deep social inequality. And maybe more damaging in the long run. It kind of stalled technological innovation. Why invent a labor-saving machine when you have cheap disposable labor?
Makes sense.
And when the big conquest stopped, the supply of new slaves dried up. That contributed to the economy becoming rigid, unable to adapt, and eventually starting to decline.
Were there other economic problems that led to the fall?
Oh, yeah. Running the empire got expensive. Military costs, administration, it all added up. When the money from conquests slowed, they had to rely more on taxes, heavy taxes. People weren't happy.
Understandable.
Then you had serious inflation, especially in the 3rd century CE. They started debasing the coinage, putting less silver in the denarius. So the money was worth less, prices went up, shortages happened, and eventually the economy started to fragment. Trade became more local, less empire-wide. That weakened the whole structure.
So how did this republic, this powerhouse we've been discussing, actually become an empire? The sources point to the Punic Wars, the fights with Carthage, as a real turning point.
They were huge. Rome won, became the dominant Mediterranean power, but those wars, they really messed things up internally. Small farmers lost land, the gap between rich and poor got way bigger.
And the republic started to wobble?
Definitely started to crack.
Yeah.
You see it with the Gracchus brothers. They tried land reform to help those farmers,
Oh,
but
yeah.
got murdered by senators for their trouble. That shows you how broken the political system was becoming, how violence was replacing debate.
And then Marius and his army reforms.
Right. Marius's reforms made the army stronger, but soldiers became loyal to their generals, not the state itself. That opened the door for guys with armies to basically do whatever they wanted.
Enter figures like Pompey, Crassus, and Julius Caesar.
Especially Caesar. His campaigns in Gaul made him incredibly rich and powerful. So powerful that when the Senate told him to come home and disband his army in 49 BCE, he just didn't. He crossed the Rubicon River, marched on Rome, and started a civil war. And won.
Making himself master of Rome.
Pretty much. Then he gets appointed dictator for life. which, didn't sit well with the old guard who still believed in the Republic.
Leading to his assassination.
Yep, stabbed on the Ides of March, 44 BCE. But killing Caesar didn't save the Republic. Ironically, it kind of finished it off, plunged Rome right back into more civil wars.
And out of that chaos came the Second Triumvirate.
Right. Octavian Caesar's adopted son, Mark Antony, and Lepidus. They teamed up, crushed their enemies, but eventually they turned on each other. It all came down to Octavian versus Mark Antony and Cleopatra.
The famous Battle of Actium.
31 BCE. Octavian wins decisively. He's now the sole, undisputed ruler of the Roman world. Finally, after like a century of brutal civil wars, there's one man at the top.
And this Octavian becomes Augustus.
Exactly. And he was smart. He didn't declare himself king. He very carefully kept up the appearance, the facade of the old republic, gave power back to the Senate, technically. But really, he held all the cards, took the title Augustus.
And this marks the beginning of the empire proper.
Yes, and it ushers in the Pax Romana, that famous 2-century period of peace and prosperity. Rome's golden age, really, all under the carefully managed rule of Augustus and his successors.
But even empires have rough patches. The crisis of the 3rd century sounds bad.
It was bad. From about 180 to 284 CE, huge political instability, like over 20 emperors in 50 years, often put in power by the army, then overthrown. Constant civil war, basically.
Plus the economic problems we mentioned.
Right. Inflation, debased currency, and at the same time, more pressure on the borders from outside groups, barbarian tribes. A perfect storm.
So how did they pull out of that crisis?
A guy named Diocletian takes over in 284 CE. He realized the empire was just too big and messy to run from one place, so he came up with a radical idea. The Tetrarchy, rule of 4.
Splitting the power.
Yeah. Divided the empire into east and west. Each side had a senior emperor, an Augustus, and a junior emperor, a Caesar. It brought some stability for a while, but it also kind of set the stage for the empire splitting permanently later on.
Then came Constantine the Great. He reunified the empire.
He did, under his rule, by 324 CE. He's famous for a couple of huge things. The Edict of Milan in 313 CE that granted religious tolerance, especially for Christians, a massive shift.
Then he moved the capital.
Yep. In 330 CE, he founded Constantinople, modern Istanbul, as a new capital in the east. That was a big deal. Showed that the power, the wealth was really shifting eastward.
And the split eventually became permanent.
It did. Emperor Theodosius I, in 395 CE, formally divided the empire between his two sons. From then on, you have distinct Eastern and Western Roman empires, and the West was definitely the weaker half, economically poorer, much more exposed to invasions.
Which leads us to the final blows for the West. The barbarian migrations.
Yeah, unprecedented waves. You had the Huns pushing west from Asia, which displaced other groups like the Goths, Vandals, Franks, pushing them into Roman territory. It put immense pressure on the borders.
And then Rome itself was attacked.
A huge psychological blow. The sack of Rome in 410 CE by the Visigoths under Alaric. This city hadn't been touched by a foreign enemy in almost 800 years. Then it happened again in 455 CE, the Vandal sack of Rome. Devastating.
So it was external attacks, but also internal problems.
Absolutely. The West was rotting from within, too. Economic decline, fewer people, couldn't collect enough taxes to support the army or administration. Loyalty crumbled. The army itself became heavily reliant on these foederati, barbarian allied troops who weren't always reliable.
So the traditional fall date.
Conventionally, it's 476 CE. That's when the Germanic chieftain Odoacer kicked out the last Western Roman emperor, a teenager named Romulus Augustulus. But honestly, the Western Empire was effectively gone long before that. It wasn't one event. It was this slow, complex unraveling. Military defeats, political chaos, economic hardship, social changes, maybe even environmental factors, a whole tangle of things.
So wrapping this all up, it's just undeniable, isn't it? Rome's legacy is, well, it's everywhere. Government, law, military thinking, economics. These ideas are still guiding us.
Absolutely. And beyond those big systems, think about the Latin language, mother of Spanish, French, Italian, and so many English words come from it. Think about architecture, concrete, arches, domes, city planning. It's baked into our world.
Which raises a really interesting question, I think. Rome's story, its rise and its fall, it feels timeless. It reminds you that even the mightiest powers aren't permanent. What else can we learn from them? About, say, sustainable economies, or how societies adapt to big changes, or getting that balance of power right.
Yeah, those are the big questions Rome leaves us with. Still relevant today.
Definitely something to think about. We hope this deep dive has got you thinking about Rome's impact on your own world and maybe encourages you to keep exploring these echoes from the past that are still shaping our present.